The south of Italy, 9th century BC. Considered by the ancients to be a paradise on earth, southern Italy was the theater for an event that was destined to change the history of Western civilization. It all began here, at the Delphi Sanctuary in Greece. In a cave at the foot of Mount Parnassus, a group of citizens arrived from the island of Euboea, off the coast of Athens. They had left their homeland in search of more fertile lands to colonize. But why come here? What did they hope to find at Delphi? Was it a blessing from the god, Apollo? Apollo had both positive and negative sides, a strange, difficult, and sometimes dangerous god. But they needed his help. They were about to brave an uncharted and stormy sea that they hoped led to the Promised Land, which, for the Greeks of 2,000 years ago, was called Italy. For more than 1,000 years, millions of people traveled to Delphi to seek answers from the oracle of Apollo. His advice was especially sought by colonists setting off to discover new lands. First, there were the uncharted and perhaps dangerous waters that they intended to cross. And second was simply the religious and spiritual importance of the sanctuary at Delphi at that time. Standing almost 2,000 feet above the sea, between the Gulf of Corinth and Mount Parnassus, Delphi was the Greek or Hellenic world's most famous sanctuary. Some of the greatest masterpieces of Greek art were concentrated around the temple. Today, all that is left of the statues that once adorned the sanctuary are their bases. They were colossal sculptures made of very expensive materials, and there were thousands of them. The sight of them heightened the pilgrims' expectations. There was the bronze bull, donated by the inhabitants of the island of Corfu in 480 BC. This was in honor of a bull who dove into the sea, leading fishermen to a great catch of tuna. And the splendid bronze copy of the celebrated Trojan horse, donated by the inhabitants of Argos in thanks for the spoils of war from a victory over the Spartans. But the centerpiece of the sanctuary was the Temple of Apollo, the god that oversees all beginnings, the protector of order and harmony. For those who made the pilgrimage to Delphi in search of answers, the temple was an impressive sight. It had 6 columns made of tuff along its front and 15 on each side. The frontons were faced with marble. In the pronaos, or portico in front of the cella, famous maxims were inscribed on the columns such as "all things in moderation" and "know thyself," phrases which capture the deepest essence of Greek wisdom. But it was the words of Apollo, transmitted through his oracle, that resonated most deeply with the Greeks. The oracle's predictions were transmitted through the frenzied words of an old priestess who interpreted the answers of the god. In a cave, the faithful awaited the response from the priestess, who, in a state of trance, recited prophetic words regarding the route to follow and where they should land. By following these directions, and probably those of sailors as well, the first Greeks reached the shores of the island of Ischia in the Gulf of Naples about 2,800 years ago. This marked the beginning of the Greek colonization of southern Italy, a vast territory given the name of Magna Graecia, which in Latin means Great Greece. But what was Magna Graecia? Basically, a group of polis, or city-states, whose wealth and power would soon exceed that of the Greek cities of the motherland. For the Greek settlers, used to the searing sun, aridness, and mountains of their homeland, Italy was a true paradise on earth, with its mild climate, abundant watercourses, and fertile plains. From the first cities sprang more. The inhabitants of Sybaris, founded by Peloponnesian Greeks, built Poseidonia, now Paestum. The people of Kymi, originally founded by Greeks from the island of Euboea, created Parthenopi, which was to become the Athens of the West and is now known as Naples. Many of the residents of Naples are thus of Greek origin, direct descendants of those early settlers from Euboea. Naples is the commercial and cultural heart of the Mezzogiorno, Italy's south, the promised land of the ancient Greeks. Excavations for the new subway line through the center of Naples have turned out to be a window on the city's past. Work in such sites as Piazza Municipio has uncovered not only the old Aragonese walls, but also provided a chance to view a much deeper cross-section of the city's historical layers. Archaeologists from the Naples Monuments and Fine Arts Service have found numerous objects of Greek origin, such as the small fragment of an Attica vase dating back to the 4th century BC, decorated with the figure of an owl. Naples remained a Greek city for many centuries, even during the domain of the Roman Empire. The Romans were fascinated by Greek culture, and for them Naples represented Greece, only 120 miles from their home, an open door to the allure and refinement of the Orient. Along the hills of Posillipo, a name taken from the Greek Posilipon, meaning the place where one's troubles end and rest can be found, the wealthy Romans built dozens of beautiful villas. Wanting to blend in, the Romans were happy to exchange their togas for the Greek pallium, to converse in Greek, listen to Greek music, and commission copies of Greek works of art. But Naples was not just a tourist attraction, a sort of amusement park for the Romans. The city was a capital of culture in its own right, where one could be born, live, and die in the manner of the Greeks, as Virgil liked to say. And it was here in Naples that the great author of epics wrote the Aeneid. Reproductions of masterpieces of Greek sculpture were much sought after, a big business at the time. Thousands of masterpieces from the Parthenopian school flooded the world, a veritable legacy of Greek art. The rich Romans paid, and paid quite well, to have imitations of famous works of art grace their villas and gardens. Another aspect of Greek culture the Romans appreciated was theater. To stand on the stage of the Naples Theater was the dream of every artist, the consecration of a life, a yardstick of success. The ruins of the Naples Theater have been found buried under later constructions. If you go down into the basements of private residences now standing on the spot, you can discover what remains of the theater, made famous partly because it was the site of an exceptional premiere appearance. The Emperor Nero himself made his debut as a poet in this theater. Nero loved both poetry and music, and performed many times on this stage before an audience whom he spoke with in Greek. Not far from the theater is a section of Naples named for the Virgins. Here, hidden behind this door, several yards underground, is a veritable treasure, a Greek hypogeum from the 3rd century BC. Hypogea were large subterranean chambers having the dual function of being a burial ground and a sanctuary. It was in the hypogea, for example, where ceremonies were held dedicated to the oriental god Mithra, who was worshipped widely in Naples. This well-preserved one, the Crystallini Hypogeum, was built outside the city walls in an area that in ancient times was nothing but forests and fields. Everything here evokes Naples' ancient past, even though it is quite probable that the bones and skulls date back only to the 17th century, the period of the Great Plague during the Spanish rule. The discovery of the chamber only 100 years ago amazed archaeologists with its finely conserved state. There are votive edicula and delicately frescoed walls with figures still glowing in bright colors, and funerary urns for the mortal remains of the deceased. But what is perhaps most striking are the touching farewells to the departed, written in Greek on the walls. Here a father addressed his daughter, Aristogoras, with touching simplicity. "Goodbye, my beloved daughter." In the central part of the city is the spacious Agora. This plaza was the center of the social life of the city and the site of its market. It is incredible, but shops like these under the arcades have been here for over 2,000 years. And it is amazing to note that these narrow streets all have the same width, about 10 feet, and are spaced at regular intervals of 115 feet. The explanation given by archaeologists is that the modern-day streets still follow more or less exactly the Greek streets that were laid out when the city was founded 2,500 years ago. An example is the present-day Via Tribunali, which follows one of the two principal axes of the Greek city, and is one of the few broad avenues in Naples. The Agora is also famous for its magnificent temples. The Church of San Paolo Maggiore is the classic example of a Christian edifice standing on the ruins of a pagan temple. The ancient temple was dedicated to the Dioscuri, Zeus's twin sons, who were doomed to live and die on alternating days.